I mentioned my girlfriend's hometown at dinner, and my uncle dropped his fork and said, "Why would you date someone from that family? I've been dating Riley for 6 months. She's from this small town 2 hours north. Population maybe 3,000. I'd never been there. Never thought much about it. Last Sunday at family dinner, I casually mentioned where she's from. My uncle mid-bite drops his fork. It clatters against his plate. Everyone goes quiet. "What family is she from?" he asks. I tell him her last name, Mitchell. His face goes white. My aunt puts her hand on his arm. My mom's staring at her plate. My dad stands up and leaves the room. "You need to end that." My uncle says, "That family destroyed ours. I'm confused." Riley's sweet, quiet, works at a vet clinic. What could her family have possibly done? My uncle won't explain. Just keeps saying, "Ask your father. Ask him about David." David? I've heard that name exactly twice in my life. Once when I was 8, I found my dad crying in the garage on Christmas Eve. My mom said, "He's thinking about David." The second time was at my grandfather's funeral when my aunt whispered, "At least he's with David now." I always assumed David was some distant relative who died young. I never asked. In my family, you don't push. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I went downstairs. My dad was sitting in the dark kitchen. "Who's David?" I asked. He didn't look at me, just stared at his coffee. "Your brother?" he finally said. I felt the floor tilt. "What? You had a brother?" "He was 7 when he died. You were supposed to have a brother." My dad explained everything. 30 years ago, he and my uncle worked at Mitchell Manufacturing. It was the only real employer in Riley's hometown. My dad was 25, newly married to my mom. They just found out she was pregnant with David. The factory made industrial equipment. My dad ran the assembly line. My uncle worked maintenance. One morning, my uncle noticed the hydraulic press leaking fluid. He reported it to the floor manager. Nothing happened. He reported it again. Still nothing. 3 days later, the press exploded during a shift change. My uncle was on break. My dad wasn't. The blast killed 2 men instantly. My dad survived, but was pinned under machinery for 40 minutes before they could cut him free. They had to amputate his left leg on site to get him out. My mom was 6 months pregnant. The trauma, the stress, the constant hospital visits. She went into early labor at 28 weeks. David lived for 6 hours. Riley's grandfather, who owned the factory, paid for the funerals. Then his lawyers buried the investigation. The official report blamed worker negligence. Said my uncle had failed to properly maintain the equipment he literally begged them to fix. My dad lost his leg, his son, and his career in 1 week. The settlement was $15,000. Barely covered the medical bills. Riley's grandfather used the insurance payout to expand the factory. He's now worth $8 million. I sat there at the kitchen table watching my dad cry for the first time in my adult life. All those times I'd noticed his prosthetic leg and never asked. All those Christmases that felt slightly sad and I never knew why. "Does Riley know?" I asked. "I don't know," my dad said, "but her family does." The next morning, I drove to Riley's apartment. I had to tell her. I had to see if she knew. She opened the door,